Who want to see the king? Who want to hear the king love story, true story? How the king met his queen. How the queen met her king. The reason why the king wearing his cape and his crown right now. So let's just get straight off into it. Love story, true story. My homeboy told me to hook him up with a girl. Asked me to hook him up with a girl. I told him I'd try. You heard me? Because I like to do those type of things. Match people up, hook people up, whatever you wish to call it. So I tried, for 3 days. And she told me that she didn't want to be with him because she heard he had a baby on the way. He had a baby mom and everything. So we started talking on the phone, but only as friends, okay? The king ain't go behind his homeboy back or none of that shit. We started talking on the phone only as friends. And that's only because she made it crystal clear that she didn't want to be with him. Alright? So we talked on the phone for a whole year without never seeing each other, never in person. That's the whole point of the story. We never saw each other, never in person, never in life. Never, ever, ever. So we talked on the phone for a whole year, okay? Without never seeing each other, never in person. And during that following year, we got out of touch. 1 year later, I go to this parade in Lafayette with my homeboys. And we out there just having a good time, the king drunk and shit, you heard me? On that Grey Goose getting loose, you heard me? And the king I was just out there getting on so many girls, you heard me? To my homeboys, they start calling me D-Love. That's where I get, the name D-Love from, so I went from Diaz and Daniel, which is my real name, to Diaz and Danny, which I like to be called, to now D-Love. From the day that I was getting all them girls, they named me D-Love. And I just added King, later on. So it's D-Love King now. So I was getting on so many girls, and they was like, D-Love, go get her. And they ain't knew I get on girls like that. But the guy from the beginning of the story, the one I was supposed to be matching him up with, the girl, yeah, that guy, he knew. Anytime he asked the king, ask me, to, yeah, Danny, look at those girl. Yeah, go, shit, the king go get them. I got that. Don't even worry about it, I got that. So I got on so many, they just started calling me D-Love. And I got 13 girls. She made magic number 13, the queen, which I'm about to get into. So we go to this, it had a fair going on down the street. And we go to this fair down the street, and it had a picture booth. So we jumped in the picture booth, when we got there and everything, and started snapping it up. And spirit hit the king because I'm a very spiritual guy, and told the king to look back. I look back, and I'll say that I caught this girl attention when I looked in her direction, because when I looked in her direction, she looked me in the eye, and we caught eye contact for a split second. And she turned her head, and when she turned her head, I turned my head, and we done that 4 times. So I'll, turn around and look at her, and she'll look at me. You heard me? And then she'll turn her head, and I'll turn my head. Then I'll turn back around and look at her, and she look at me, and I'll turn my head, and she turn her head. And on the 4th time when we done that, like a true love story would go. So, that's what you call a love story. And true story. So, on the 4th time when we done that, look back at each other like that, she, when I looked back at her, she was walking off. And I ran behind her and, asked her, stopped in the tracks, skirt, where you going? You heard me, straight like that. And she was like, I'm coming back, I'll be back, like that. And I ain't believe her. shit, I was drunk and everything. You know, and sometimes girls give you they wrong number and everything. So shit, I ain't believe them. So, you know, I went back where my homeboys was and started back snapping it up in the picture booth, you heard me? And why, you know, we in the picture booth snapping it up, shit, keep in mind, the king is a master psychologist as well, okay? You know, study of the psyche, study of the soul, you heard me? Of humans' behavior, the mind, okay? The king noticed that this girl was coming, walking towards in his direction with her head in the air like this, meaning she's looking for something or someone, which was me, the king. You know, because facial expressions, different tones in your voice, body language is the king beyond all that shit. You heard me? So the king don't miss pretty much shit. He did. So the king noticed she was walking towards his direction with her head in the air like this, meaning she's looking for something or someone, which was me, the king. The queen was looking for the king. So, you know, I walked up to her and I asked her, you know, what's your name and where you from? And she told me her name and where she was from. And in the back of my mind, my subconscious mind, you know, like the name resonated with me, and that place resonated with me to a certain degree. But at the same time, you know, I was drunk and I was intoxicated. So that was my excuse. Shit, her excuse was we never had seen each other, never in life, which was my excuse too. So the king had two. Surprise, Uranus. So I mean, you know, planet of unexpected events, which rules and governs Aquarius, which is surprise. So I mean, full of surprises. So check this out. Now the king then got the queen number. You heard me? I done got a number, and you know, me and my homeboys, we went back to our town where we from and everything. And I called her as soon as I made it home, because I knew something ain't feel right, but it felt right. The king knew something ain't feel right, but something felt like just right. Something, you know, like destiny, and it was like faded, like something just had took place spiritually. Like I knew this, and that's why she was the first, number one, and the only one that the king called. Out of all the other 12 girls, she was the first. So let the king add on to the story, because I know a lot of you guys, shit, know the king's story already famous. So that's nothing. That came easy, being famous. But anyway, let the king add on to the story now, guys. She was the first, you heard me, and the only one that the king called out of the other 12 girls. Magic number 13 was the queen, okay? So, moving on. The king called the queen when he made it home and asked her, you know, what you doing? And she was like, I'm still at the fair. And the queen told the king that she'll call him tomorrow. You heard me? And I called her soon as I got up the next day. Soon as I woke up, I called her immediately, because I knew something spiritual had took place. I knew something magical just had took place. Something ain't feel right, but it felt right. It felt just right. I knew this. So the king called the queen, and the story goes like this. This when we find out who each other, you know, was. Okay, and the story goes: the king called the queen and asked the queen again, "What's your name and where you're from?" The queen told the king, okay, and vice versa, same thing, okay. The queen asked the king, same thing, all right. Now, she's not from Baton Rouge, okay, and that's where the king was going like every day, pretty much living, you know, at that particular time in Southside Baton Rouge with my homeboy, where he was living at. So, you know, that 14th Street, that's where all the magic happened, baby. All the magic. I'm talking about South 14. Yeah. So, I mean, the king asked the queen, you know, when you come to Baton Rouge, since she's not from Baton Rouge, when you come to Baton Rouge, where do you go? And the queen was like, I go to Sherwood, like a lot. You hear me? So, and that's where I was going every day. You know, me and my homeboy. I skipped a lot of parts just to get to this main scene. But I was talking, like going out with her best friend months before me and her actually, you know, bumped into each other in person and found out, you know, who each other was. I was going out with her best friend, Ashley. Shout out to you, Ashley. I know you probably don't remember the king, but shit, look at me now. So, I mean, moving on. The queen, you know, was like, yeah, I go to Sherwood a lot, which was where I was going every day, me and my homeboy. So, the king asked the queen, do you know a guy named Ryan from Sherwood? And the queen said, the Ryan who? The king said, the Ryan from the back of Sherwood. The queen said, yeah, I know him. The king said, Christine, this Danny. The queen said, oh my God. The king said, this is crazy.